One of my favorite people in New York is Robert Hardin. Robert was a big-time criminal. He's a big man, knows how to really lead people. He was a con artist. I'll give you a little bit of background. Someone burst into a room one day where he was occupying. He was stark naked in a bathtub with a cigar in his mouth, and a rival drug kingpin had a gun, pointed a gun at his head and said, "Your life is over." And he pulled the trigger and the gun didn't go off. And Robert, as he got out of that situation, he extricated himself from that situation. He called someone who he thought knew God. And that started over a period of time, him coming to faith, and he had a dramatic, it became clear that he needed Jesus in his life. But there were things in his life because of his lifestyle that he had not learned conventional work. He got plugged into one of the ministries we work with, and he learned some life skills, godly life skills. Now, one of the guys who taught him life skills, let me tell you a little bit about this guy, different from Robert, but he didn't grow up in poverty. He had some of the best education you can imagine. He graduates from Harvard Law School. He has a chance to work in a substantial job on Wall Street. Instead, he moves to Harlem. And he's armed with the love of Christ. He's a football player, but he's never really worked among poor guys, but he wants to invest his life in Harlem. So guys come into his apartment regularly. Now they're raw, they're off the street. They rip him off, they take things from him, but he keeps working, and he realizes that what these men need are godly life skills. And he develops something called holistic hardware. And then we, Here's Life Inner City, have ventured with Joe and putting this in a video form. Holistic hardware has been used to change thousands of lives. In some cases coming to faith, because non-believers come into the holistic hardware classes, but those who are Christians to gain those skills that they need to function in the broader society and really be meaningfully contributors to our society. And Robert Hardin, whom I described earlier, was one of his first students to come in. And he did something I didn't expect. He reached into his pocket and he pulled out a sheet of paper and he said, "Folks, this is a Con Edison bill." That's the power company in New York. "I'm 39 years old, and this is the first Con Edison bill I've paid in my life." He said, "To you folks, that's not a big deal, but for me, to pay this bill is a very important thing. Because you see, I moved around from apartment to apartment. I lived with women. I knew how to work the system. I didn't have to pay anything. I just avoided it. But because of what God has done in my life, and now I'm gainfully employed, I pay my bills." It was a big deal to him. He is now a branch coordinator for the sanitation department in New York. He's known as a chaplain. He's not. But all the men in the workforce of that particular section of the sanitation department in New York go to Robert when they have needs. And Robert's able to give them counsel and share the gospel with them there in the sanitation department through Robert. And Joe's investment, he's one of my favorite people. And just parenthetically, you know, as I share my faith, speak sometimes, and I refer to Joe to explain the gospel. I say now, Joe went to Harlem, invested his life there. You might think, "Now why did you do that?" I bet you did that because you want God to accept you. He said, "No, I'm accepted by God." "Well, I bet you're doing that because you want to get closer to God." "No, I'm as close to God as I can get." "Well, then why do you go? Why would you want to do that?" And he would tell you, he would say, "Because of the love of Christ, because I am embraced by Christ, because I know what I needed, I'm not like these other guys. I had the best education, best raising, but that doesn't matter because I know that at the core, I'm just like them. I needed God to act in my life. Then that humbles me. And because I know that, I'm willing to invest my life wherever He leads me. And He has led me here to work among street men and women.